Hello, and welcome to the Setting Trick Podcast. I'm your host, John McAllister, and today we have our third in the Youngest Life Master Series. This is a compilation of 3 different interviews with Joel Wooldrige, Sam and Dan Hirschman, and Steven Cochran, all of whom set the record at one point for the youngest life master in the ACBL. Joel is one of the best bridge players in the world today. He's a full-time professional player. And then Sam and Dan don't really play that much. And Dan kind of quit after he made Life Master, in spite of being on Leno and being in People magazine. And then Steven Cochran sort of halfway between Joel and the Hirschmans, I suppose. And I feel like his conversation is a little bit of potential unfulfilled, like he could just never find that partner. If you want to hear more of these conversations with the youngest life masters, you better reach out to me, because this is the last of the ones we've recorded. If you want to do it, if you want to hear it, I want to know, because if you like them, there's more youngest life masters to be interviewed. And I did promise that I would do that. So I just need a little nudge. Before we get to our episode, I just want to say that we've recut Double Dummy. It's about 45 minutes long. In the words of episode 2 guest, the legendary, the great Bob Hammond, this new version really captures the competitive spirit of the Junior World Championships. And we did a feedback screening over the weekend where we did a live Zoom and got to hear what people liked and what didn't like. And we're fine-tuning that cut with that information. And we're going to be doing more of these because, frankly, we're going to get this film right. So if you want to participate in that, please sign up for our email list. And we'll let you know when the next feedback cut will be available. And until then, I hope you love this episode. It's an interesting yarn. Becoming the youngest life master, going over, as the Hirschmans describe it. If you're a life master, think about when did you go over?
Will you please state your name and age?
Joel Wooldrige. I'm age 42, which is the answer, so it's the best age.
Okay. And how old were you when you became the youngest life master?
I was 11 years old in maybe 2 or 3 months.
And whose record did you beat?
I beat Sam Hirschman. Later on, his younger brother, Danny, took the record away from me. But I had it for a little while, not too long.
In your well, you said that your number one accomplishment in bridge, after finishing second in the Bermuda Bowl and being player of the year, ACBL player of the year, your number one bridge accomplishment was becoming the youngest life master.
I mean, yeah, it was kind of a special thing. My mom took me around to different tournaments, and we kind of crushed the numbers for a little while toward the end there. It wasn't our original objective, but the closer we got, the more we wanted it. And yeah, it was kind of fun.
What was your original objective?
Just to play bridge and have a good time. My parents both enjoyed the game. I enjoyed the game. After, trying it out, I got pretty addicted quickly.
And so what was the circumstances around your learning then?
My parents are both good bridge players, and they would go out and play at the local club. And, I was pretty young back then, maybe 7, 8 years old when I started listening to them talk about bridge. And yeah, I played other card games with them, but I was curious about what was going on with that. And, my dad agreed to teach me. And after a couple of years, I sort of lost interest right away, but then I came back to it. And then he took me out to a live game. And then I was like, okay, I want to keep playing.
And at some point, your mother swooped in. What was that?
Yeah, originally the deal was that they would teach me bridge. And then the idea was that it would be a way to save on having a babysitter. Right? I'd play the game with them. We'd form a team, 3 of us plus 1 more. And I'd be learning bridge with them, something they enjoyed. But my mom was never really so optimistic about the likelihood of my being a good bridge player. It was just that I would know the game. My dad, he had no ideas about that. He said, well, why not? You can learn bridge. Why not? And so after a little while, when I showed some promise, now my mom realized that actually I could be a bridge player. And then she kind of like took the reins for my dad and started teaching me everything she could and playing with me often.
And did she do that originally? So were you saying that she didn't do that originally with Youngest Life Master in mind?
Oh, no, not at all. That was never the objective. Actually, that only became something relevant to us. I think when I was a few months in, I went to a Toronto regional with my mom, and we played in the mixed pairs, and we had a very good day. We had like a 65% and like a 70% game or something. And so we won the mixed pairs, and, you know, everyone was kind of like surprised and happy, and we were happy. And we ended up talking to Marty Hirschman, who's Sam's father, after the game. And he jokingly made a comment to my mom saying, so are you going to go after Youngest Life Master now? And she was like, maybe. And so I think at that point, that was when he decided to make it more serious. And yeah, we started playing more often.
And how much before you actually broke the record do you think that this tournament took place?
But it was several months. It took me less than a year to turn Life Master once I started playing. So I don't know, maybe like 5 months, something like that. And then I turned Life Master after that.
So did your mom know Marty and Sam already, or did Marty just speak to you because you were a child?
I think we might have known each other. I ended up playing with Sam kind of soon after I turned Life Master. So I think we might have already had some acquaintance before that, but not too much.
The story I heard was that Sam helped you get Life Master. Is that just from the story then? It wasn't actually playing with you?
I don't know that that's factual. Yeah, I think someone just ad-libbed that to make it sound interesting. We did end up playing together in a Flight B event and winning it at a regional, but that was after I was Life Master already. And we also played in the junior program at the beginning before I played on the teams. So like maybe when I was 13, something like that, we played in the junior program together, but we did not get picked for the team.
And who do you think was more excited when you became Youngest Life Master, you or your mother?
Probably my mom, but it was pretty fun. They announced it when we were in San Francisco that I had turned Life Master because I was getting like my final points there. And we were in the Sunday Swiss, the final day of the Nationals. They made the announcement. And I stood up on my chair and waved to everyone, and the whole room was clapping. So that
wow.
was cool. Yeah.
I think that's the best story I've heard since I've started interviewing you guys. Like, that's a pretty cool place to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very cool.
I got the impression from your that, and it could be wrong, but that maybe your mom was a better player than your dad. Is that?
Oh, well, I mean, in her mind, she's very proud of her bridge bidding ability, especially. But her overall game is solid, and she's a good player. My dad is also a very good player, but he's a little bit prone to flights of fancy, I would like to say. He has a theory about aggressive preempting that is, I would say, very aggressive. One of his mottos about preempting is that if you open on the 3 level, you can't have any defense. So you can't have an ace and a king on the side. You can't have the ace of your suit. You can't have, like, he doesn't even want to have a queen on the side. Like, he sees like a jack is like a flaw. He's like, he wants that the worst hand you could imagine, right? When he opens this 3-level preempt. So his partner just knows pass is a good idea. Like, partner passes 20 high, no problem, whatever.
What was it like getting the record for you?
I guess, yeah, it was kind of a cool thing. Most of my friends weren't into bridge, like back in Buffalo. So, you know, when they heard that I was Youngest Life Master, like, well, what's that? So it wasn't like some kind of cheering point for my friends. But I'd say the coolest part about it, besides, you know, just the achievement itself, was that I got to be in the Guinness book for a period of 1 year, because it took them like about a year to process it. And then I was in the book for a year, and then Danny came along and took my record away. But I was there, and it's published, and I have that book somewhere. So
was that something that you all did, or the ACBL did?
It was already in the Guinness book before I came along. That record was just something that they kept track of. So, you know, my name's in print in the Guinness book. Pretty fun.
But how good of a player do you think you were when you turned Life Master?
I mean, I was still learning the game, but I definitely had some skills. I remember playing in the regional with my mom, and the opponents saw us come to the table. I was pretty young kid, like 10. They looked at me and then they like did a grand slam on a hand. And I remember just like sitting back and waiting for my trick. I was like, well, I'm not going to lead from my queen. So at some point, you're going to have to lead it to me. Yeah. And there was a lot of things like that where I knew enough about the game where, I played not amazingly, but I had good card sense. As declarer, I had strategies that people would not expect from a young player. And I used that to my advantage. Like I would false card them and they would always bite. And I would lead suits that I wasn't strong in to try to get them to break my suits for me. And that worked really well because they weren't expecting it. So, I used those strategies. I read bridge books to try and improve my game. So I had some technical skills too. Yeah, it was working pretty well.
Did you hear from the Hirschmans when you broke the record?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm sure someone congratulated us and probably also set up the plan of vengeance.
I'm interviewing the two of them together tomorrow, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
One of the things about the Hirschmans was that they had this like annual celebration for Youngest Life Master where they'd invite a bunch of friends to like a party for Sam at the time. I never attended it, but I heard about it. And so, when I beat his record, I kind of spoiled their annual festivities. So they had to get it back. I think that was part of the issue.
Because he crushed your record.
I mean, I know he must have been like 10 years, some number.
He was a year and 2 months younger than you were.
Oh, wow. So he was like 10.
Yeah. He was 10
almost.
Yeah. And so you didn't play with him either then in like helping him get it?
No, I might have played one game. I don't remember, but I don't think I had. I mean, I certainly didn't play many games. I might have played once.
So this was 1990. There's no online bridge. Like this was 300 master points that you had to.
Yeah, 300 master points. You had to get the colors. There was no black point requirement, but silver was the hardest one because I don't know. They didn't give out a lot of silver when you attended the sectionals. Like even if you won twice, you would still need more silver. As opposed to if you go to a regional and win once, you probably have all the gold you need. So that was definitely the hardest requirement.
And you went to the nationals. Like what events were you playing at that nationals?
Well, in San Francisco, I played in, I think it might have been a morning KO. And because people were aware of how close we were, I think Fred Gilliman and Sherry Weinstock agreed to play on a team with us. And I don't know where we finished, but I think we got some master points for that. So yeah, things like that. And I think I would play like 3-4 sessions a day, just trying to gather in as many as possible. I don't remember having any special finishes except for maybe that morning KO, a little bit here and there. And then it adds up eventually. You play in a Swiss, you win a couple matches, whatever.
Did you go to the nationals for the entire 10 days?
Yeah, as I remember. Yeah.
And so you went there with the idea in mind that that felt like you were going to get the record.
Yeah, we just needed a few points at that time. So, might as well go to a big event where you can win a few points if you just play in a few events. And then that's what we did. We just grinded it out.
When was the last time that you told somebody that you were the youngest ever ACBL Life Master or that you were in the Guinness Book of World Records for that?
It's probably been a few years. It's not the most important thing to talk about with people who know my history with bridge. They usually want to talk about other stuff, not like from when I was 10 years old. They'll talk to me about, well, I'm a professional player now, so they'll talk to me about hands that come up or whatever, my professional capacity. I don't really talk about it too much, but I did uncover the book not too long ago, and it was a conversation starter with some people. But
the Guinness book.
Yeah.
Ever since you really got into it and started doing the Youngest Life Master Chase, have you been kind of that much into bridge ever since?
Oh, well, I always liked bridge. It wasn't that I was chasing the Youngest Life Master. That wasn't the reason why I started at all. I just wanted to play the game because my parents talked about it all the time. I wanted to know what was going on. And then when I started, I was like, well, this is kind of fun. It's another card game. I liked card games. There was strategy in mind and I like puzzles. And so it's like you have to solve the puzzle, kind of like you have to figure out what's going on. You do it with another person. So I like the social aspect to it too. I don't know. It was always a good time to me. And, as I moved towards college, like I realized that bridge kind of interfered with college. So there was a little bit of a lull. there where I was trying to move away from bridge to try and focus on my studies, but that didn't work out too well for me. And then, when I realized that I wasn't going to leave bridge anytime soon, I went back to it with a lot of enthusiasm. I never left. I still love playing.
What was it like when Dan beat you?
It wasn't a big deal to me, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, again, that wasn't the reason why I joined playing bridge. It was just like a cool thing that I did. No big deal. I still had that one book where they had my name in it, and can't take that away from me. and they got to have their annual celebration, so good for them. No big deal. I mean, with how many times it shifted hands, like as of the last few years, I think there's definitely something to that. I heard there was some kind of prediction made by some famous predictor of stuff. I don't know what you call those people, about the youngest life master. I don't remember when. It might have been Sam, but there was a prediction made that he would be the youngest life master and no one would ever beat it, by someone who had some renown. But considering how many times it shifted since then,
yeah,
pretty failed prediction. But it's just a funny thing that I heard once.
Well, it's been 8 years. The previous record holder was Zach Garrison, who held it for 8 years. Dan held it for 12 years before Adam Kaplan beat him. Mm-hmm. And Andrew was the first one to do it for 500 master points.
Mm-hmm. So the 500 requirement is an interesting thing, because I think part of that they just shifted it up was because of master point inflation.
Yeah.
Right. Back when I was playing, you would play at the club, and then they didn't send the points directly to the ACBL. You had to write it on a little ticket, and you would get like a fraction. You'd say like 0.42 for first place at the club today, and then you'd send it in. Like, the master points came in real slow, but after a while they changed the rules on that, and they started adding master points to games because there was another section of another game playing simultaneously with you. And so when you did it like that, you would get like almost double the points if you placed. And so I think that's part of the reason that they shifted it up, because people were getting to 300 too quickly.
So did you actually have to send the master points to the ACBL yourself?
Yeah, that's how it worked. You had to like mail it in.
Wow.
Or the director might do it for you. But back then there wasn't like, a computer network of ACBL that was contacting and connecting everything. The real accomplishment with bridge is when you continue it and then you learn from the game and you show that you have talent and proceed. Like in Danny's case, he got the title, but then stopped playing afterwards. I think he was only about getting the title, from what I heard.
Right.
But the other record holders, I believe, enjoyed the game and kept playing. Sam maybe a little less, but he was definitely enthusiastic about the game. And I think that's the real achievement.
All right. Well, I am grateful to you for doing this.
No problem.
So we have the Hirschman brothers, Sam and Dan, two of the youngest ever life masters of the American Contract Bridge League. Welcome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Please introduce yourselves.
I'm Sam Hirschman. I was 11 years, 9 months, and 5 days old when I became the Youngest Life Master, since that's the topic of this podcast. I'm now 44 years old, making that quite a long time ago. I'm a school teacher. I have 2 young children. My wife and I live in Ann Arbor. We both teach.
Hi, I'm Dan Hirschman. I'm currently 36 years old. I made Life Master just a little over 10. I want to say it was 10 years, 2 months, 20 days, but I actually forget off the top of my head if that's exactly right, but a little over 10. And I'm 36 now. I currently also live in the same area as Sam, actually. I live in Ypsilanti, Michigan, though I teach in Providence, Rhode Island. I'll be moving back there soon. And I live here with my partner and our 18-month-old daughter.
And Sam, are your children on track for Youngest Life Master, continuing the Hirschman tradition?
I don't think they're headed that well. Okay, my daughter, who is 4.5, has shown no particular inclination to play cards. A little teeny bit of like war now. Whereas like by 4.5, I think Dan and I could both like play a hand. Not like particularly well or necessarily all the time, but like there were moments. So she, so I don't think she's going that route. Some games they show interest in. I think one of the things I've actually been noting is I remember very strongly my parents sitting around the card table with some of their friends playing bridge and being interested in it. And we don't do that at home. I think I play other games around them. So I think they are more likely, I'm guessing, to emulate that. My son is 2.5. It remains to be seen. He's showing some inclinations towards things mathematical, but also like princesses and unicorns.
Dan, do you still play bridge?
I have played like a session in the last 2 years, so not much.
By session, do you mean like a club, like a
club game with my dad.
sanctioned game?
Do you ever still play on the computer?
Gearing up for that session, I played like for a month of online hands, just solo, but not a ton.
How did it happen that you and your dad played that time?
I moved back to Michigan to be close to family while my daughter was little, and because I could for the year, and he requested we play a club game, so I did. I think I played like a club game every 2 or 3 years with him for the last 20 years.
According to the Power Ratings website, your dad is the best player in Michigan by a fairly wide margin. How instrumental was he in becoming the youngest Life Masters?
I mean, it wouldn't have happened without him at all. So to say, I mean, he's a non-starter to talk about, really. To say instrumental, it's like it would not have happened. It was largely because of him. As much as we became the Young Life Masters, he was fully on board, if not like leading the charge, right? And is that I mean, you can use a different metaphor if you want.
It was clearly something he enjoyed doing with us, and he like sort of incentivized us, learning to play bridge and playing with him. And also, he was very good. And he was particularly good at, especially for me, because you're doing with Sam, playing with a young and experienced partner. Like, I think there's a set of skills to be an expert player, and he had all of those. But he also had a particular set of skills for maximizing your partner's, around your partner's weaknesses and things. And so, I mean, I can't imagine it. I mean, I did play some sessions along the way with other people, including with Sam, but other people as well. But it would never have happened without. Yeah.
We had some minor success together, Dan and I playing, like it might be events and things like that. But I have 2,600 master points. I think probably 2,000 of them were won with him. And actually, probably not quite that many because I did go out and play some in my 20s a fair bit with other people. When I was fairly seriously involved in the junior thing from when I was 19 to 25. And I played less, but not none.
And what about you now, Sam? Are you playing bridge now?
Yes, I like to do some mental gymnastics in the morning. So playing like the free daily bridge-based thing on the computer is just to like while I'm drinking my coffee at 5:30 or 6 a.m. And sometimes later in the day I'll go play the ACBL robot imp. But I don't have the uninterruptibility to play a game with other players. My children are around, especially during COVID. I mean, my father has been interested in playing a session even in these times. It's like just very hard to commit that much time. I did occasionally go play a club game and even a couple of 2-session sectionals through the time my children have been young. Yes, I play in local tournaments, things like that. Club games occasionally.
Dan, how did you and your dad do in the club game that you played in?
It was a pretty small game, and I think we came in second or third of the 7 or 8 pairs our way. We did fine. I did not make too many embarrassing mistakes is how I think about it. I mean, this is something interesting, and we can talk about this, I don't know how everyone happens, but one of the things I most take away from my time playing a lot of bridge, I actually written about this a little bit on my blog, is I don't winning was not the point. Playing well was the point, and playing well would often lead to winning. There were those times you make the correct play and it doesn't work out, and that's what you got praised for. That was correct. And it was always striking me because I'd hear people talking at the table after the hand or whatever, and they'd say, "Oh, I should have done this instead of that." And my dad would always afterwards be like, "No, that was the correct play. It didn't work out. It was still the correct play. That's what you're going for." And so I take that lesson away very strongly and bring it to other areas of my life as well. There's a lot of situations that are much more ambiguous than bridge, but where the same lesson applies.
How much of it was taking your brother's title for you? Because you beat Joel Wooldrige's record by a pretty significant margin. You held the record for a pretty long time.
Yeah, I'd say my initial motivation was certainly tethered to that. That's what I'll tell you about. There's a Sports Illustrated article from when Sam made Life Master that I was, I think, almost 4 when the article came out. And I think I was on record there saying I was going to beat his record.
There's definitely one of the interviews that followed when you were 5, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was a motivation there. And I would sometimes joke about it if I was antagonizing him that I didn't care if I beat Joel. I just cared if I beat Sam. But realistically, I think I started playing pretty seriously when I was about to turn 9. And it became fairly clear that we could do it with some room to spare. There was not a sense of, I got a race to beat Sam. And Sam, we played together.
He was gonna beat me at all points in time. Somewhat concurrent with my becoming Life Master, and even more so, I think by the time Dan was Life Master, the structure of the events changed, and the character of a master point became different, like the difficulty of winning a master point.
Yeah.
So we won, like Stan and I played in flighty events or stratified pairs. So
did those just not exist for you?
The speed stratified, I don't think existed. No, flighted.
Yeah.
I won some almost went over in a flighty Swiss in Dayton, Ohio that would have saved us 2 months on the road in whatever.
Yeah.
Because
you had issues with like gold points, right? Was it gold points?
I actually had a gold point issue. There were no bracketed knockouts.
Right. Because I middle in the process, we won like a bracket 2 knockout. I got 16 gold points before
you were almost done. Right.
Yeah. And so like it was just a lot easier.
Yeah. You and me as a pair in bracketed knockouts was a pretty solid pair for our 2,000 points between us or whatever. No, less than that, 1,500 points between us. Mm-hmm. That's not. I don't even want to hint that there's any kind of jealousy about that. It's not it was always very clear to me that Dan was going to beat my record. There was it was not an issue, and I was happy to help. And Joel in between, so I never even thought of it that way.
Right.
And I was fine when Joel took it, actually. Because, it was not. I know I played with Joel and I knew each other. There was a trip my father and I took to Buffalo when we were going for the record that I think may have been what started Joel. I'm not sure. I might have the timing slightly wrong in this, but there was definitely an interaction with, we played on a team with Joel's dad or something like that. And I played with Joel a number of times.
When you had the title, did you see Joel coming for it? Did that bother you?
It's hard to remember some of this stuff, but to some extent, I was like done with media coverage. Like I had been on local. I had been interviewed for the newspaper. I had been on local television. There's a full page picture. There's a picture and a full page in Sports Illustrated of me. I'm like, okay, how much more do I need? I'm 12 or 13. So I was kind of okay with not any more of it for a while. And truth be told, have not really sought out that kind of spotlight in any real framework since then. I was fine with, it was not a lot of fame, and I was fine with it. I don't need that for myself.
So the Sports Illustrated wasn't like a culmination for you. It was more of like, oh man, still like that.
No, at the time it was fantastic, but it was like, what next? I don't know, Dan, if you felt the same way about going on Leno. Like, it's just sort of like what else do I do? What more do I, the Guinness Book of World Records was pretty good too.
Which I didn't get because they realized it wasn't a world record.
Right. It's not a world record, but I'm in one. Or 2 years, there's 2 years of it or something that I'm in. I think Joel's in them too, the one after.
He is. He said yesterday. I interviewed him yesterday. He said he was in it.
Yeah, they stopped printing it when Dan.
They realized it's a North American record. For me, I think it was somewhat similar. Like, it was fun to get the media coverage. It was fun to have the title for a little bit. But there's also like a weird pressure attached to it. Of like, you're gonna be some genius in this area or related areas in the near future. And it just wasn't that. It was a fun thing to do with my dad. I'm glad I got the title. It was a fun, year and a half to spend doing that kind of stuff, and to get some recognition for it was cool. And I have, the clips forever. But I was kind of done. I opted out of the bridge playing scene much more aggressively than Sam did after that. In part, I think there's also the second thing here is the timing of the release of other games. Magic the Gathering came out when I was about 8, 9, and we got into it right as I was finishing Life Master.
I was 18.
Here's a bunch of, I can use those same skills and enjoyable activities with people who are 15 to 20 instead of 60 to 80. And also, they're different games. They have different attributes. I like both of them, but that's where I spent a lot of my teenage years. And so it was kind of a fun thing I could say to my card game friends. Oh yeah, I played bridge when I was 10 and was young as Life Master, and they were all super impressed by it. But then I was playing other stuff.
And you were on Leno?
I was on Leno. I think the actual order here was, according to my dad, like after the Life Master thing happened, there was a little bit of local news coverage, right? Yada yada. And like someone from Leno reached out, and he was like kind of surprised by this. But then nothing happened for a little bit. And then I was in People magazine. From the People magazine stories, what led the Leno people to call us back and book me. Wow. I guess Leno really liked to have once a week or so, he'd have a kid of the week who did whatever. This kid trains his lizard to jump through hoops. And I was the kid who played bridge. I was on with Fran Drescher and Leslie Nielsen.
That's not bad.
It was not bad.
That part has aged well, actually.
Yes. So that was pretty amusing. And it was a fun trip. I got paid to go and hang out in Southern California for 2 days. And it was, it was a fun experience, but it was also just, I didn't really watch Leno or find him particularly funny. I enjoyed the experience, but it wasn't like a lifelong dream or anything, And similarly, it did not give me a thirst for the limelight or anything like that.
How many minutes do you think the interview was versus how many they actually showed on the?
They showed most of it.
Yeah.
And they even did this weird teaser thing where they, before the outro clips before because the last interview of the night, right, which is only like 5 minutes, and like so they did the two celebrities first before to tease the interview. They showed clips of me playing poker with the crew and like taking all their money, staged, and kind of random. So
people love to make poker now. It's like it was like I don't know if it was more communicable to the wider audience, but there were several things where I was set up as like a card shark poker player kind of things. Kenny Rogers, the gambler, was played over. I think it was a local clip. You know,
it was either that or chess, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know if it's still. I think the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer came out right around when I made Life Master, and so I should look it up for sure. But like, I think that's what happened. And it's like I got a lot of questions about what sort of lay to that, including like, oh, you must play chess and be a wizard at chess. No, I mean I know the rules, but I'm not like a chess player. But that was they were sort of searching for analogies. Partly I think because it reflects. By the time but especially by the time I made Life Master, like bridge was decreasingly culturally relevant, right? Or like the people for whom it was relevant were increasingly old, and more of the kind of middle of the age distribution. It just wasn't a thing anymore.
And you guys have a sister, and she's seemingly missed that, like just passed, like just said, no, I'm not interested in playing.
We played a few. She came out. She had some master points.
Mm-hmm.
We played as a five-some, the family team, and a few sort of local Swiss teams at some point in like 10 years ago.
I think for like Father's Day one year, she learned bridge for Dad. Like Dad taught her, and she like played some sessions like as a gift to him almost. She did enjoy it. I mean, she actually in adulthood got me more into other kinds of games, like ones we were talking about before, card games, board games, etc. So we had a regular sort of family game night where we play all sorts of interesting, complicated games. And so once she'd done that, she was like, oh, maybe I could learn bridge. She went back and learned. But yeah, she never got super into it, and certainly never got into it in a competitive way.
I think the age difference between you guys is like 9 years.
8.
So, but you like when Sam was 18 and Dan was 10, you guys are playing this Magic the Gathering stuff together as a family. I think that's pretty cool. Like the
in between sessions of the 2 sessions pairs event, while we were eating some fast food, probably like Sparrow or something in the convention center.
Yeah.
I think I can remember doing that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
When do either of you think the last time that you told somebody you were the youngest ever ACBL Life Master was?
It comes up once in a while as like a trivial fact or something like that. When I'm meeting new coworkers, it often comes up. I don't know. I'm actually not out that much. I'm the 2 small kids. I haven't been out for 5 years, so it doesn't come up very much at all, I would say. My students, every once in a while, somebody is like trickles through.
It's come for me a couple times in professional settings. I think people, when they're doing introductions for you, will Google you.
Yeah.
Right, and that New York Times article is reasonably high because it's New York Times. And so if you Google my name and you dig through a page or 2 search results, you find it. So once or twice I've been giving talks or something, and people will throw it in as like the fun tidbit, which is always a little weird. But in terms of like, myself introducing myself that way, it's been a while.
Have you guys seen Andrew Chen, the current title holder, the 8-year-old?
I think I've seen a picture of him in one of the magazines. Right? Does he play with his brother, or am I confusing him with an older pair of brothers?
No, he does play with his brother. His parents also play, so they play as a family some.
The most convenient way to do it.
Yeah. He's the first person I interviewed. I wasn't planning to do this series of interviews, but I interviewed Andrew, and he's kind of a difficult interview, frankly, because he's so young.
Yeah.
And then I had the idea. I was like, wow, there's this amazing tradition of people breaking this record. And invariably, just out of like the way it's set up, they're always, the next one is older than the next one, and so it's been fascinating. This has been the first time that I've had a pair on as brothers, and it's been a lot of fun to have you all revisit.
Is there just the one other pair of brothers?
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
So yesterday when I talked to Joel, he told me that you guys had a day of celebration, like an annual.
I was my father's party.
Youngest Life Master party, and that he seemed to take a certain amount of pride in ruining that tradition.
No, because the party didn't. I don't know if he got to ruin it. He might have come to it once because the party was always for Dan.
The party started the year after I made Life Master. As partly a way to thank everyone who'd been on a team with us.
I think we might have had one big party for me.
Sure, yeah. But the party as a tradition, which ran for 20 years, I think. went at that.
So they moved it. Thank God.
It was called the Dan Hirschman Youngest Life Master KO Teams, and it was the first set of invitations was like everyone we played. All my dad's clients, definitely, fairly serious professional player, and then all his friends, and the people who played on teams with us, sort of a thank you. And it became a yearly event that was quite big. And I think the biggest was something like 25 teams in our house.
Wow.
Yeah, like 120 people would show up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the food spread was enormous. Bought a bunch of food, but also was sort of potluck. And it's a day long, it was like a 2-session event, basic knockouts. Each round gets shorter.
Yeah, it was like 14, it was like 12 boards, then 10 boards, then Saturday 8 and 6. And if you got to the end, I think it was still 6 or something like that. But it was like 1 a.m. by then. I won one year.
Yeah.
It was like pretty reasonable bridge. It was not like the midnight Swiss. It was actually like by the time you made it the first couple of rounds, it was like a real.
Yeah, and it was handicapped, which was kind of fun because it actually mattered because everyone was pretty good, but there was still a fair bit of variation. And so I played it a couple times and attended many other times. But so that was a tradition, and that lasted actually. I thought when someone else broke the record, which happened, quite a long time ago at this point, he would stop it. He did not.
We might have asked him, did he change the name? No, at some point it just became the party. It might have still been officially the Dan Hirschman KO team, but it was the party.
And then so it ran for about 15, 20 years at our parents' house, and they moved it to the local club for a few years. And then I think they finally stopped it.
No, they didn't have it this year. I don't know if they had it the year before this.
Oh, they did. That's right. Yeah. So I don't know what Joel's thinking of. He didn't ruin any. That tradition lasted a long, long time. Much longer than...
Joel came to our house at least once. Joel was at our house at least once, maybe twice. It wasn't that far to drive across Canada to go to Buffalo. It's like about 5 hours. So we would turn up at the same tournament. Toronto, London, Ontario. We'd drive to Buffalo.
You went to Buffalo a couple times, right?
Buffalo or Syracuse even. I think we drove to once or twice, and God help us, that was like 7.5 hours in the snow. Because it was always in the winter. Maybe that one might have been in the summer. I'm not sure Dad would have actually done that drive.
You went to Western Canada, right? That was
Okay, so you know how yours was nice, and we knew it was going to happen. It was just a question of how
leisurely. We could take a weekend off.
Okay, right. Okay, the record before mine was like 11 years, 10 months and something, or 11 years, 11 months and something. Okay, so I beat it by like a month and change. Maybe it was more than 30 days, I think. So we were going. Dad had that whole summer mapped out.
Yeah.
That was like week 7 or 8 of 10. We had 2 or 3 more, and it was gold points I need.
Yep, right. So
I actually went over getting the 5th, 6th on the 3rd day of a of a Flight B knockout. Yeah. Right, where we won the first day, lost the second day, but they had the 3rd day to get the points anyway. So we played that. It was like morning KO or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Right. So that's where I went over with my gold points. Right. You went over, didn't you go over in the Midnight Swiss? But then we weren't 100% sure, but we then took it out on a revoke the guy had revoked, so we actually did win our match, and so that was enough points to go over.
No. So I went over, I'm pretty sure it was one of these Midnight Swisses where they kept the best loser.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we both have these like I lost and went over that.
Yeah. So we made it to the next round by like being the least bad loser of the second round of the knockout or something, and got to make it to the money round. But then the next day we won like 5 points in some other event, and so it was
no. Like it was the knockout I'm talking about. We were like 3rd, 4th, or 2nd, or something like that in an actual with Dad and like Brenda Bryan or something like that. It was like
a good pair.
We like won points.
So because because that was like we won like 0.5 points in the midnight knockout or something. It was like but it had been enough, and that. So I do remember very much the losing to go over thing was really funny.
It sounds like your dad, if he's professionally teaching bridge, like it must have been good for his business to have you guys doing.
There was no business when he was playing with me. Mm-hmm. That may have been where he got the idea, or people started asking him for. It may also be where he played enough to get good enough to be, to do so. I mean, to some extent, that's when we started playing a lot. That's when he stopped being an attorney shortly after that.
Right, he was still working as an attorney that whole time, wasn't he?
Yes. He didn't stop. He didn't in fact basically stop practicing law until I was 13. But that was before you.
Right. So when I was going through it, he was not working outside the home most of the time. He was the main caretaker. We had a lot of time, especially in the summer. We just open 2-3 months where we could just go to all the tournaments and.
Right, and we had 3 of us also. I would go. I went with them. We would, we didn't go every week. I think for you, but there were the 2 summers. The summer I was 11 and the summer I was 10. We were on the road. Okay, like on the road, driving to Lincoln, Nebraska. You went there also too, Dan.
I did.
I can't remember if it was 115 and we walked to Denny's the first time I was there or the second time I was there.
I think it was the first time, because the second time we were there was when there was like a tornado we could see from the convention center or whatever.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That was a fine tournament and everything. Like, it's far.
But his Bridgman is right. So it took off between the two of us. By the time I was playing, he had a set of clients. And then I think it got bigger after. Again, I don't know exactly how he thought to do it.
He taught the class. He taught a class at the club when the Bridge Connection in the local club first opened up in its original location. Although I think it's actually a slightly different club. I don't know if they slightly different people, but whatever. That's when I remember him really starting to pick up clients from that. Jack and Renee. And I don't know if he actually Jack was a client, but he was in the class. But some of the other people who later became Flight A players. It was I believe it was simply an advanced class. And I would sit in on it. It actually did somewhat help my game.
So was the ACBL the one getting you in Sports Illustrated, Sam?
My mother, throughout all of this, has worked at the Detroit Free Press, the newspaper, the local newspaper.
Right.
So she had connections. So like at some point it got mentioned, and I think she actually didn't make a big deal out of it when it happened. And then someone like maybe gave her a hard time about it. Not even like jokingly, like, why didn't you tell us? Because they found the story somewhere else. Or like one of the local news stations picked it up from somewhere. Because I'd been interviewed right after I went over, like the week after I went over, the Nationals were in Salt Lake City. And I had been on the local media there. And I think there might have also been a mention in the New York Times, I think, in the Bridge column in the New York Times.
Yeah, didn't Brian hand you played with that or something?
Something like that. And then there was a spread in the local paper. And then I think local media picked it up, or these were all roughly concurrent. And then later, the Sports Illustrated was after all, was later. I was a fair bit older by the time they came and did that. I mean, fair bit in this case might have been 6 months. The local news was pretty quick, and then the Sports Illustrated thing wasn't exactly out of the blue, but it took a while for it to happen. I know that magazine came out around May 1st of 1989, 8. When did Michigan win the NCAA championship? I have to look it up for Neil Robinson on the. This happens. We live in Ann Arbor, so it's relevant that that's the Sports Illustrated I'm in, right? I can tell people that one.
Oh wow.
Yeah, right. So I don't remember if that was 88 or 89, but it might have been as much as like a year and change later.
I think it was 89.
I think it was 89. So I think it was. So it was like a full 14 months after I'd or 15 months after I'd gotten the record. The Sports Illustrated article.
Wow. That's a pretty cool one to be featured in when you live in Ann Arbor.
Oh yeah, it's a great issue.
It sounds like you guys were on a pretty aggressive run. So once you went over, did you continue playing?
Not at that rate. It was also time for school to start. Yeah. So it was a summer, right? One of my mother's rules, I believe, was that I was not allowed to miss school to play bridge. I think this might have been violated once or twice, but like on a very short, on a short and planned basis, like akin to like leaving early for like Easter break or something like that to go to the Southeast. We went to the Southeasterns in Miami Beach a couple of times, or Bal Harbor. Yeah. We also, Toronto at some point moved to that weekend, I think. Or they moved the weekend my break was. So there was always like Canadian National. So there was always like a big tournament that I think we might have like a few times taken Friday off to go to that. But pretty much I did not miss school.
I definitely missed school once or twice in that kind of way of like, leave early on a Friday to get to the tournament kind of thing. But also because we were under the gun time-wise, it was a little less intense. So we played, a lot, like pretty much, most weekends during the school year, and then the whole summer, basically just that. But I was 9 and didn't have a lot else going on. It didn't feel like an imposition. It was just like, my dad at that point was my primary caretaker anyway. My mom worked full time. And so like hanging out with dad all day in the summer was just what you did. It was not.
We weren't play outside and ride bikes around and play in the forest and climb the trees kind of kids. No. And really, the internet didn't exist yet enough to make us play high bandwidth video games, which might have eaten up all of my time if I had had them.
I did sort of basically just stop playing after I made Life Master. Not like super aggressively, but I basically didn't play a lot ever again. I did start caddying quite seriously. It became my main job ages 11 to 18. I worked all the local tournaments, some of the nationals, etc. Occasionally I'd sneak a session while I was there or something, or get called in to be a fill-in. It's happened a bunch of times, which was kind of funny. So I stayed connected to the bridge world quite strongly that way. But that was what I did. I caddied and used the money from caddying to buy cards for other games, buy Magic cards, buy Legends of High Brings cards. So I was kind of done with it. I enjoyed it. but I had sort of gotten what I wanted out of it, was happy to move on to other things.
I think you guys are the most feted that I've come across in terms of being on the Jay Leno show and being in Sports Illustrated.
That may have been the peak time. I remember I was saying the average age of the league was 55 when I was playing a lot. Yeah, right. So if you think about who was watching, or I guess, I don't know about reading Sports Illustrated, but like that's still a large demographic, large target demographic.
There was still a bridge column in every newspaper. Right. It was still
newspaper.
like, it was just right. People still write newspapers all the time. But it was right up there with chess and all these other games that were sort of like kind of things that were in the cultural ether. And even by the time I was playing it, sort of somewhat stopped. And then by the time I was 20 or whatever, when Adam Kaplan made it, I think it had pretty, it was becoming just an old person's game. And so I think that's probably connected. Yeah. I mean, when I made Life Master, I think the league was like in the early 60s, and that was the perfect Leno audience, But 10 years later, 20 years later, now it's a smaller group and even older, especially for people who are serious enough to want to read articles about it or watch things about it. So yeah.
The only news coverage I've seen from Andrew Chen is, obviously bridge winners, but he was written up in the San Jose Mercury News. But that's really all I've seen.
It comes up in these conversations a lot, the decline of bridge as it were. And it's something that I have seen people work against, and I've never had anything good to come to mind about. It's sad because it is a worthwhile thing to do, but like some of the reasons I cannot play, I do not have time for a session, certainly live. Most of the time, my life does not have that in it. And I think the world has sort of gone that way. Same reason why they had a shortened baseball game.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's cool about COVID is that there's this group of kids out in Silicon Valley, and they've started a youth bridge association, and they're having their first tournament online on Saturday. And so I think the virtualization of just, like I was on the Zoom the other day with a friend of mine. We've never lived in the same city, and it was the first time doing Zoom. And it's like, this is so nice to get together on Zoom and like be able to see you. I think there are positives, that are coming from this need to be more virtual. Thank you both so much. It was cool to meet you.
Jonathan.
All right. Steven Cochran, thank you for joining us. Welcome to The Setting Trick.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Will you please state your name and age?
Current age.
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Steven Cochran, and my current age is 58.
Whose record did you beat?
Oh, a girl who lived about 60 miles away from me named Regina Barnes.
Did you know her when you...
Oh, yes. She was a very good-looking girl, so I definitely knew her. Yeah, when you're 14 and there's this good-looking girl who gets the youngest Life Master, and you're right there. And so, yes, I knew her, and we played against each other quite a bit.
What was the requirement in order to get, was it 300 master points?
Yeah, 300 master points, and there was some gold, red, and black gold and red requirements.
And did she cheer you on in this process? What kind of role did she have? Was she an inspiration to you in terms of...
Well, it wasn't a competition. We were young bridge players playing for fun. The fact that I made youngest Life Master was actually not a goal to achieve it. It was just, it happened. It was more fun just playing and competing. So yeah, we kind of cheered each other on when we did well because we were the young ones in the San Francisco Bay Area.
And the two of you were sort of unusual. This was in the 1980s. It was unusual that there were young people your age playing bridge at that time.
Actually, it was in the 70s. Yeah, I'm old. I did that in 77, but we were in a hotbed of bridge. San Francisco area, we had Mark Franklin and Matt Franklin lived down the street from me. They were king of bridges. Regina, she lived in Modesto. I lived in Palo Alto. There was other young players, a guy by the name of Billy Miller. I'm sure you've heard of Billy Miller. He lived in Menlo Park. Used to go over to his house a lot and just ride a little motor scooter around because he had one, so it was really cool. Yeah, it was a mecca of bridge. There was all the top, I shouldn't say all the top, but a whole lot of top players hung out in the San Francisco area. There was a pair named Lou Stansby and Chip Martell who were at the time in the country, a couple of the top pairs. It was a young group. There was I remember a guy named Bob Crosley, lived up in Marin, young guy, told us about playing Frisbee in between sessions. That was mandatory. So it was a good time to play.
And how did you get into the game at such a young age?
I like cards. My mom played. So she was an avid club bridge player. She played club all the time with a friend of hers. I went and watched a couple times and said, oh, I want to try that. And over at NASA, there was a NASA base in my area, about 20-minute drive. A lady taught lessons for free on Monday nights. So you would just show up and she would just teach you how to play. And I did that for a couple of months and then started playing duplicate and said, this is kind of fun. So I went and played a lot and it was interesting. I played mostly with my mother. And like I said, she was a good club player. So it was tough to well at higher level events. But I did okay. I qualified for the blue ribbon pairs a few times and stuff like that. So I guess I did okay. You know, the bug caught me. And so I was playing and I met a lot of younger people. When I say younger, under 25. And we just played a lot. And I would sometimes go to tournaments and just pick up partners, whatever it took. So the bug really hit me.
The bug really hit. It's amazing to think, that you're doing this in 1970s when there's no internet. Like the internet is not even on. It is not even a blip.
Yeah, but I think so. The internet became a problem because it took people, all the gaming and other adventures, I think took a lot of the young people out of the game because I found it harder and harder to find massive amounts of young people playing. I remember going down to Pasadena and playing at the Pasadena Convention Center. It was called I'm blanking on the name. It was like Bridge Week or something. And you'd go down there and play, and I swear there was 5,000 or 6,000 people playing bridge, and the whole convention center, every room booked with bridge, and it was great. I mean, you wanted to play in this event or that event. I mean, you'd have 8 events to choose from in a day. It was a lot of fun, and I remember doing that. So after I became youngest life master, I continued playing through high school. I found a guy who was a few years older than me, so still young. And we partnered up and he took up the game. And so we played together and we did okay. We were getting better and better. And then these computers came out and in the 80s, and it was a big distraction for the game. So a lot of young people went and played with computers. So it took some of the fun out of it when a lot less of the younger crowd was there. And it became a very old crowd or very, very young. And I got caught when I was in my 20s. I noticed I was in the middle. There was very few people my age all of a sudden. Yeah, it was exciting. And I have lots of stories. If you want to ask any, oh boy.
Are you still a member of the ACBL today?
Oh, yes. And I struggle because bridge is a partnership game. We all know that. You need a good partner. I took it upon myself to teach other people how to play, to get them to be my partners. Because I did not want to find a partner who was 50 years my senior. And so I would try and find people around my age and taught them. And I taught people when I was in high school. I started a bridge club and we ended up with about 25 bridge players. And then I went to college and everybody in my fraternity learned how to play bridge just because I taught them. I wanted to find somebody who could really be my partner for a while, but I could just never latch on. So now I only play about once or twice a year. I jump in. Sometimes I surprise people because nobody has any idea who I am anymore. I remember back when I was younger, I could walk in and they used to give the high seeds and I'd get a high seed. And I remember I came up against Jeff and Eric Mextra, right? And we were a high seed. And he looked at me and my partner, who was 3 years older than me, and they looked at us and I think they figured that we just got the wrong entry. and my partner, of course, read the 2 names, looked at the 2 faces. I guess we should just put in the hands and said, we'll just give you all the match points on this round because he just faded. He did stress. I mean, if I had played a hand, we would have been fine because that was my strength, was declare play. But he just got all nervous and, gave him a couple contracts. I always got the real high seed because everybody in San Francisco area knew me from the very beginning. And then as I got older, it branched out to other areas. I just couldn't find that magic partner to last. And so when I got out of college, I was playing a couple, 3 times a year and just would play with whoever wanted to play with me, and it was at a time when most people kind of already had their partner. So I was like, well, who do I play with? So I was getting whoever as a partner. And I mean, I took second in an open pairs with a pickup partner, who was average plus. I think I knew how to play a little bit, not take advantage of anything. Just if you declare play for me, I'm going to do well. That was my attitude. So I struggle, and I'm still a member, and I get my bulletin. I read the bulletin. I read the articles. I still go, I love the test your play stuff. I go, okay, I can still do this. I just don't get out and about enough.
Were you feted when you became the youngest life master?
Well, it was very unceremonious. It was at a club game. I got the points. I didn't really say anything to people, right? I don't brag about accomplishments, right? So I did that, and then a couple of people came over to write an article for the local newspaper, and I had my picture in the paper, and people in the schools were asking, "What's this all about?" They didn't even know I played bridge.
Wow.
So, and it was funny because I was gone for a whole summer playing. Around my 14th birthday, I took off with $200 in my pocket.
Wow.
And traveled the U.S. and Canada playing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, a 14-year-old boy with, I was with Bruce Ferguson and his group. I don't know if you've heard of him, but
I know Bruce. Bruce.
Yeah, and he lived out in British Columbia. We met up in Seattle, got in his Mustang, and there was a couple other guys, and we drove down through the middle of the United States, out to the East Coast, up to Halifax, and all the way back to British Columbia.
Wow.
Yeah. That was when I first experienced that you can actually make money playing bridge, because I only had $200. And I ran out of money real quick after like the second tournament. And so they go, well, why don't we get somebody to pay you? And people would pay, we called them little old ladies at the time. Very nice ladies with a lot of money who wanted a partner who could help their scores, get them some matches, get them some master points. And so I did, and made a little money. So we'd go to a tournament, and I'd play in one event with a real partner. And usually the real partner was somebody I met that day. So I remember taking second place in the Calgary tournament in a Swiss team event with 3 people I didn't know before we got there. And I go, oh, they turned out to be pretty decent players. So it was fun.
Are you still in the San Francisco Bay Area?
No, about 10 years ago, I moved out to Florida. And now I live, which is supposedly another hot spot for bridge. And I've gone to a couple tournaments out here. And I always tell people I'd like to play. Can they find, I call the tournament director and say, I'm a decent player. Can you find a partner that, is a decent partner? Oh boy, the things I get set up with sometimes are incredibly, they're very nice people. Let's put it that way. They're extremely nice people that I play with, but don't usually score too high. We'll get like third or fourth, and they go, wow, that's the best I've ever done. Third or fourth in a section. And I'm like, oh, okay. But that's okay. Because I don't have tons of master points, because I played back when getting 300 master points was a feat.
Yeah.
And now you can do that fairly quickly. Winning a regional event would get you like 25 points. So it was fun, though. I think the highlight was my trip across country and just learning about playing bridge day in and day out. We had a guy who was sponsoring us, a guy named Clarence Goppert, who was sponsoring our group. He just sent us on this goose chase saying, well, I'll see you at this tournament. Well, we're driving and he's flying, He's staying at the tournament. We're at some place where you didn't turn off the lights, because if you turned off the lights, all the roaches came out. So, 2 different budgets. But learned a lot about playing bridge and how to play bridge well. And that helped. And it wasn't a push to get points. It was more just, hey, this is a great adventure. And it worked out well. I didn't really know if I was going to get the youngest life master or not. So I wasn't really focused on that. I was more focused on just having a good time playing. I really, really love the game. I just wish I was finding partners where I could play because I do love it.
So you were a pretty good player by the time, from the sound of it, when you became a life master.
I think I was. I mean, at every tournament I went to, I was getting written up for my declare play. I was playing against a guy named Gary Hayden, who was a very fine player. And I finished declaring a hand, and like on the last 3 tricks, he was, end played. And he looked at me, and I smiled, and I go, I got you. And he goes, you knew? I go, the whole time. So he goes, oh my gosh. So yeah, I used to be able to do all that, kind of stuff. I could read the game real well, and that was my strength was that I always thought of bidding as fairly simple. It was all about who your partner is. If you have a good partnership, then you know what each other are doing. And that was always fun. I never got into fancy conventions, so I kept it simple. I focused on declare play and defensive play. And one of the guys I played with a little bit, a guy named Neil Chambers, he was a very fine player from Canada. And he taught me that the goal is to have 16 to 18 plus scores out of your 26 boards. He goes, if you can get 16 to 18, you're going to be in the winner's circle a lot. And I go, well, how do you do that? And he goes, well, work better on your defensive play and always make your contracts. So, and he goes, if there's only one way to make a hand, then that's the path you have to take. And if there's only one way to defeat a hand, that has to happen. And he goes, you'd be surprised how often those would happen. So I changed my way of thinking to what's the only way I can make this hand? And it really helped. So
you said that you had a hard time finding partners, and Regina is this attractive girl 60 miles away. Did you ever ask Regina if she wanted to be your partner?
I did, but here was the problem. We were 14. We couldn't drive.
Right.
So I did ask her a lot, and she was very polite. She said very polite no's. So she was very attractive, and apparently I wasn't measuring up, which I'm okay with. I just go, okay, I get it. Like the Franklin brothers lived in my area, but they were each other's partner. So, and they developed their own system of play. And I'm like, okay, can't really get into that group. And so I was looking for a lot of people who really wanted to play. And I noticed Regina stopped playing as much once or at least I didn't see her as much once she kind of got to the Life Master, whereas I kept playing. But I was also an athlete. So I would do things like run a marathon and make sure I was done before noon so I could make it to my 1:00 start for my afternoon, open pairs event or whatever, right? And between sessions, do things. And then while I was in high school, didn't have much money. So, and I had now found a buddy to play with, but I was teaching him along the way. When he and I would go to tournaments, we would sleep outdoors. We would bring sleeping bags, and we'd have enough money to cover some food and the tournament fees and the gas. I remember one time we were at San Diego tournament, we're sleeping on the beach. I wake up, something on my face. I realize I'm now in the ocean. And because the tide had come way up, being a kid, and all of a sudden I wake him up and go, hey, we got to get to the game. And we're in the water. And we were literally our sleeping bags were completely submerged. And we were both sleeping in the wet. And it was like, oh my gosh. But, that was the right price for a hotel. It was free.
But sleeping on the beach, you're 14 years old, going on this cross-country journey. Yeah. Your parents must have been pretty open-minded.
Yeah, well, my parents were divorced, and we had 9 kids. And we were living with my mom. I think it was okay for me to be out of the house. It was just, there's a lot of people there. Right. Usually we averaged about 5 or 6 living at home. So it was good that, I was gone doing my thing. And I think we had met Bruce at a tournament one time. And my mom said, oh, that's fine if you go with him.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, you know, isn't that funny that we're just a lot of trust. That was a good experience and a lot of fun. Played in the club, but then started looking at just like playing sectionals, regionals, where I could see better players. Although we had some very fine players in our club, it was fun getting out and playing against, the best of the best and seeing how I could stack up against them. I always wanted to play like in those early morning knockout team events, and I never could because I could never get a team that would be willing to wake up early. They go, oh, an evening session would be fine. I go, no, these are like at 7 a.m, so that you're still good for the, the afternoon games. And they go, no, we're not doing that.
So the knockouts at regionals at that time were in the morning?
Yeah, they were. You had one session a day.
Mm.
And those would be for, like, if the tournament was 5 days long, they'd have a session each morning. And that usually whittled it down to, a finals. And if they had to do a finals, they didn't want to take those players out of the big games. So, because those were often the top players. And if they had to choose between going into knockouts or going and playing in their pairs events, because a lot of those people were professional. So they had to kind of choose which events to do. And that was usually based on, not on their say, right? So yeah, those would be not concurrent with the big events like the men's pairs, open pairs, etc.
So this guy who was sponsoring you all, I forget his name, but the gentleman who was flying to the tournaments, was he paying you all to play knockouts with him, or were you playing pairs with him?
I only got to play on team events. The other guys he would play individual events with. So, and then there was lots of people who were willing to pay a little bit of money to play with me, this young kid too, because I at the time I was known. So that was fun. I remember during that summer, I had to get down to, I was in Kansas City, Kansas, and I had to get down to St. Louis. And the only person we knew driving there was Ron Smith. And so he says, well, I didn't have any money. And he was kind of tapped out. And we were driving Sunday night, right? So most gas stations weren't open. So he had this little Beetle, and we didn't have much gas. So I remember we drove that whole way. He drove me to my grandmother's house in St. Louis, and we were right behind this huge semi-truck. We're in that little wind space the whole time, and watching our gas gauge. Oh, and he and I talked the whole time. It was a great time. But I was like, oh, this is a unique adventure. And we got there and had enough gas. So it all worked out. Well, those were times where you had to get from tournament to tournament. And I was stopping at my grandmother's because I was going to see them for a bit because there was a little gap and then go on to the next one. Those were fun times. Different. I think they're different now.
What are you doing professionally now? You said you were...
Well, yeah, I became a CPA. And did that for 8-10 years, CPA and CFO. While I was I was also a professional soccer player at the same time. So it was semi-professional. We got paid and got new jerseys every week, all that kind of stuff. But then I became a high school math teacher and a soccer coach, and that's what I do. And it's a very nice, relaxing job. And I teach CPA classes also. So I do a lot of teaching, which makes sense with all the teaching of bridge I did. I did a lot of teaching of bridge to a lot of people and kind of wrote up how to play and taught them. I remember back even when I was in my teens, I was friends with a guy named Ben Hardy, who was a caddy, but his dad was more well-known. His dad's name was Max Hardy and was a director and author and player and all this. And I got to be part of some of his writing because he let me give some insights onto some of the play and stuff like that. And so I'd read over when I went over to their house, they lived in Southern California, and I'd stay there and I'd read over the manuscripts as he was writing. It was kind of fun. And now notice I'm flipping pages. That's how old school I am, because I know it's now all on a screen. But back then it was all typewriter.
Oh, wow.
Different time. Then I tried to continue strong enough to take King of Bridge. You'll notice on King of Bridge, I was the first two-person King of Bridge, which was an interesting thing. And I don't remember why. I think it was something with the timing of the cutoff of the points or something like that. But maybe we had the exact same number of points. I don't remember. It was many moons ago. And on that one, I got no fanfare at all. I was like, when I listened to Jeff talk about the fanfare he got for King of Bridge, I'm like, oh, for King of Bridge, they sent my scholarship to my high school and my high school kept it. So I go, okay. And that was the extent of my King of Bridge. I got a letter from the ACBL saying, congratulations on being King of Bridge. And I'm like, okay. And that was the whole, for me, King of Bridge meant nothing because I was like, oh, it doesn't really mean anything, I guess. And then I hear he got to go to these cool events. And I'm like, oh, I would have liked that. Yeah. That would probably have changed my outlook because actually when I was finishing high school, I wasn't going to go to college. You know, I was just going to go and I liked playing bridge and thought I could do that. And then I had a change of mind and said, oh, I'll try college. And it worked out really well. So
you would have been 24 when they had the first World Junior Championship.
What year was that?
1987. They had the
I would have been 24, yep.
World Teams Championship. I think that was for under 26. Was that something that just totally was not on your...
I didn't even know about it.
Not on your radar, yeah.
No, I didn't. And I, at that time, I was still playing. I was probably playing monthly, but I didn't even know about that. Information back then was tougher to get. You know, now you can Google anything and get it, right? But back then, there was no Google. There was no internet. Well, I guess there was an internet because that started in 79, but I didn't even know about that. And I would have loved to have been given a chance.
So I'll tell you who the U.S. in the first ever one. It was in the Netherlands, and the U.S. team was Guy Doherty, John Heller, Billy Heisch, Kamsky, and Aaron Silverstein.
Okay, I know a few of those. I've played against a few of them. And those guys are all quality. There's no question.
Sure.
Yeah, and I never compare. I don't like to compare one player to another because everybody has their strengths. Especially pairs have their strengths, you know. So I would have loved to just even been given a notification of, hey, we're thinking about this.
Right.
Because at that time, I think I was still playing very well, but I was trying to get my partner to become a life master. So I wasn't playing with a guy who was seasoned. He was very intellectual and had tremendous potential. And we just, you know, it just didn't pull off. And plus, it got tricky once we got a bit older and we had lives. Now, I mean, I've got 4 kids and a home, and I'm still active. So it's and a wife who doesn't play, and trying to sneak away for big tournaments. That gets a little more difficult. But I still try and get away whenever I'm driving around and I see there's a tournament. I just drive in and play. I'm still like that. I'll just pop in and play, which is kind of out of the ordinary because people go, well, didn't you get a partner? I go, actually, I just heard about the tournament. I was an hour away. I drove here. I'm good. I remember all those great days. I remember, you know, I played against a lot of these top players, you know, a lot of the guys from the Aces. I played against this guy named Omar Sharif.
Yeah, sure.
And I didn't know who he was. And I scored a couple of good boards against him. And he had like 6 people watching him, right? And I was this no name, and we got a couple of good boards, and he came up and talked to me, and he goes, you play very well. And I go, well, thanks. And I just kind of talked to him like a normal person. And then somebody says, you know, he's a famous movie star. I said, oh, I got to go and watch the movie then, because he was. I mean, that was his big thing, but he also played for the team out in Italy. So, you know, he's a pretty good player, right? So what were they called? The Lotus team or something. And he was... What's that?
Blue team.
The blue team. But I thought they had another team, another name also. Yes, and he was just such a fine player.
Team that was called like the Omar Sharif All-Stars, maybe.
My memory of those little things is harder for me to get. And I used to like playing against all those guys like Paul Soloway and Barry Crane. And I heard your podcast with Ron Smith when he talked about Mark Lair. And Mark Lair scared the bejesus out of me. He was so intense. And I found out he was actually just this super nice guy. But he was he looked so intense when he played. I thought he was going to rip my head off or something. And then I talked to him afterwards, and he was just like a nice guy who was just totally into the game, which was awesome. But he did. I remember the first time I went up against him, I was shaking. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know bridge was that kind of game. And then I realized it's just passion. That's good. I've been lucky. I grew up in an area that was just a hotbed. And it's a hotbed of young players, 25 and under, who all were just incredibly good. And it forced me to play well. You couldn't make a mistake or else they just rip you up. That was it. You make a little mistake and you go, oh my gosh, I just gave them the contract. And you'd see a smile come on their face. And, and it was like, okay. Because we knew each other. Yeah. And I was the newbie. But we had some respect, but they were very, very fine players who played day in and day out. And I was a high school student, or actually a junior high and then a high school student. I couldn't play all the time. I actually had to go to school once in a while. Couldn't drop out yet.
Well, we ought to play sometime. We ought to play. Do you play on Bridge Base ever?
Is that online?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never played online. I assume it's fairly easy to do, but it is?
Yeah.
Okay. We should play sometime. That would be fun. I think about the game a lot. I'm trying to inspire my wife to play, but it takes time to learn the game.
We got to get you teaching bridge to your math students again.
Yeah, I did that. I was at one school for 20 years and I started up a bridge club there, and I had some people go and they actually took it and started playing in their university when they were in the 90s. And then when the 2000s came, a lot of them said, well, there's all this online. And I go, oh, we can learn online. Oh, well, then what am I here for? Right? It was great when you couldn't do it online. You actually had to have a person.
Right.
Yeah. I keep striving to try and understand the game better. Even though I'm not playing so much, I'm playing in my head. So I can read the bulletin and that just gives me a whole bunch of deals. And I'm thinking, well, why would they do that? Why would they do that? One of my favorite old stuff was Bridge in the Menagerie. I don't know if you ever read that. Yeah. And those characters, and I go, that is so true to life. You get at the table and you've got those characters and why they're bidding what they're bidding. I remember I had one partner who said he had trouble when he first started with me because he couldn't bid my hand. In other words, I tended to bid a little aggressively because I would say, I can make that extra trick. And he tended to bid his partner's hands because he was a professional player, so tended to do that more. He learned real quick, a few hands in, he goes, oh, we can't do that. Because I might be a little light, I'll come through. So not like really light, but just, okay, more of an aggressive bid than a pseudo bid. I had a lot of fun on that trip that I went across country playing. And it was so interesting because I was the guy who didn't drink because I was 14. Everybody else in their 20s getting hammered at night and they're looking forward to the after party. I'm like, time to go to sleep. Maybe watch a movie. What else do I do? I would be more focused on, hey, maybe I'll go out for a run, or maybe I'll play some sport, or maybe I can get in some extra games. Maybe I can find pickup partners for the early morning games or something. And just play. I played so much. I learned so much about the game, and knowing when to be aggressive and knowing when to lay back, I think was a big thing it taught me at that time.
Well, I'm grateful to be able to re-engage you with bridge as a part of this episode. That feels like an ambassador for.
I like that.
I think one of the takeaways from this episode, and if you're a longtime listener, you'll know that one of my goals is to introduce young people to bridge. And Joel Wooldrige, who plays as much bridge as probably anybody, he really didn't get into it at first. So if you've got somebody that you've introduced the game to and they didn't take to it at first, there's still hope. And at the same time, I think Dan and Sam Hirschman bring up a good point that the challenge is if you're a young person and you take up bridge, you're gonna be playing with people that are a lot older than you are generally. And while that can certainly be viewed as an asset about bridge, it also might not be what a 10-year-old wants to do. That's for you to ponder. I'm doing calls with listeners to find out what they like and what they don't like about the show, to learn about how you got started listening. And I have one final question about what you'd like to hear more of on the show. So if you want to participate in that, please email me, john@thesettingtrick. Today is April Fool's Day. I'm recording this on April Fool's Day, which is the date that I was due to be born. I was not born on April Fool's Day, but certainly have some foolish tendencies. I hope you're able to do a great April Fool's prank. Maybe next year we'll have a Setting Trick April Fool's prank episode. Yeah, something to look out for. If you have some nominations for who you'd like to see pranked, let me know. Later.